Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday Morning Marxist Forum. This session is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel with the link on our website. The website is icssmarx.org. That will happen in the next few days. ICSS stands for the Institute for the Critical Study of Society. For a decade and a half, our sessions were held at the Marxist Library in Oakland, California. Now we host our sessions on Zoom, and I should say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, as we have speakers and attendees from around the United States and throughout the world. My name is Sharon Rose, and I'm today's moderator. I'm a member of the ICSS Program Committee that organizes this forum. Our committee always welcomes input, feedback, and suggestions for topics and speakers, and you can contact us through our website, again, icssmarx.org. This is a comradely forum for political discourse and debate. As such, we ask that you show respect for our participants and the moderator of today's session. Please note that the opinions expressed are those of the speaker and participants, not necessarily those of ICSS. However, we are united in our respect for the work of Karl Marx, and we believe that his work remains relevant today. Our motto is taken from Marx's 11 Theses on Feuerbach. The philosophers have interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Our session today is entitled Establishing a Successful Anti-Imperialist Political Party in the U.S. And our speakers are Butch Ware with Laura Wells. The U.S. has for decades strongly enforced a two-party system. While there are differences, both parties support U.S. imperialist domination of the world, militarily and economically, and have earned their description as two parties of war and Wall Street. This presentation will focus on the opportunities and hurdles of creating an anti-imperialist political party that can serve as the electoral arm of the movement. Butch Ware sees 5 areas which need to be addressed and developed with the goal of winning power to change the United States' direction. Vertical integration, culture, fundraising, team building, and demographics. Butch ran as the Green Party candidate for vice president alongside Jill Stein in 2024. Butch earns his BA at the University of Minnesota and his PhD at the University of Pennsylvania. He is currently an associate professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He has also taught at Northwestern and the University of Michigan. His scholarship focuses on anti-imperialist resistance movements in Africa, the diaspora, and the Islamic world, as well as the broader intersection of spirituality, social justice, and revolutionary thought. He plans to run for California governor in 2026. Laura Wells has been active with the Green Party of California since the party began in 1992. She has run as a candidate for public office, primarily state controller, and for governor in 2010, with the platform of public banking and tax the rich. So with that introduction, I'd like to turn it over to Butch. We will have a discussion after his presentation and Laura's comments. Go ahead, Butch.
Peace and power, everyone. I hope the rain falling here in Santa Barbara, most welcome rain, isn't too distracting or muting my voice. So I'm gonna say a few words in a moment about the 5 places that Sharon mentioned that I would touch. These were specifically interventions that I think that the Green Party needs to make in order to make itself eligible, qualify itself as a candidate for a successful anti-imperialist political party in the United States. But before I get to, a case for what the Green Party can reform and how it can contribute. And I really hope to hear, like, from the people that are gathered in this room, the ways that we can grow together as a movement. I want to actually take the question on in its broader scope first. So how do we establish a successful anti-imperialist political party in the United States? The first thing that would come to mind is that we have to define what success is. And when we get to the culture change element that I see, that I would like to advocate for in our kind of broader collective leftist struggle, I think that we need to set our sights higher. We can no longer be an opposition party. We need to be actually seeking to gain political power. We need to be gaining political office. We need to be running to win. And the reason we need to run to win is that I actually believe that nothing less than the survival of humanity is at stake in our struggle against American empire. The reason for this is all around us. We see Southern California lit ablaze. We see Gaza lit ablaze. We see temperatures rising beyond a point of no return. And the two imperialist parties in the United States of America have no internal capacity for self-rectification. They must be stopped. We must struggle and fight against them. Neither of these parties has the resources within it to undo the dynamics that they have launched. They are corporate parties beholden to corporate interests, and therefore they are going to take us over a cliff. So we need to be organizing to win. That is the definition of success. The next thing that I'll say on this particular point, because that sounds daunting, is that as a historian that has, studied resistance movements, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist resistance movements in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Caribbean, in African-American communities, and as somebody who, and I'll talk about this, in a little greater detail, as a committed, believing, practicing Muslim, I converted to Islam after reading the autobiography of Malcolm X at age 15. As a philosophical matter, there is a single universal truth that runs through all of our sacred and secular traditions across the globe, and that is that all empires fall. And what we are tasked to do is to accelerate the collapse of this empire and usher in something better in its stead. So where are we now? We are in what I would describe as the extinction burst of white supremacist empire. As a historian of the slave trade and anti-slavery resistance movements, as a historian of colonialism in Africa and anti-imperialist resistance movements, I'm going to give you the shorthand version of the story. We had Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch, French, British, and now United States of American white supremacist empires that have dominated the globe for the last 5 centuries, spreading warfare and misery to every single corner of the globe. And the United States of America is the last of those white supremacist empires. It will end with this. 5 centuries is more than enough. But if we are to understand what we're actually up against, we need to grasp the nature and depth of the problem. There has never been a more murderous and dangerous imperialist state in all of human history than the one in which we currently reside. The capacities for surveillance and death dealing that the United States empire has would make the Pharaoh of the Bible or the Quran blush, would make Nimrod wet himself, would make any imperialist envious of our capacities for dealing death. And as empires collapse and fall, they become increasingly ruthless, they become increasingly desperate, they become increasingly extractive. This is late stage capitalism. They are wringing every last drop of profit out of us at the cost of whatever it costs in blood. And as I mentioned before, and as this was set up for us in our opening, this is not a Republicans are fascist problem. This is a duopoly problem. In this last electoral cycle, when Dr. Jill Stein and I ran on a platform of environmental sanity, anti-imperialism, reparations, land back, we were able to finish third in the electoral cycle, but it was a distant third. The American population is in the grips of this duopoly right now, largely because the same corporations which manipulate political outcomes for these two political parties also control the media. And therefore, they are a consistent source of misinformation that makes it difficult to organize a successful anti-imperialist political party, which is the aim that we share. Chris Hedges, award-winning journalist, framed the conflict between Team Blue and Team Red in this last electoral cycle as a conflict between corporatists on the one hand and oligarchs on the other. That Team Blue likes to have predictable neoliberal. I described Kamala Harris, essentially as a brown version of Hillary Clinton. They like to have those kinds of stable partners in political office because it allows for predictable returns on investment. Trump, on the other hand, is a chaos agent, but oligarchs love chaos agents because their job is to sow instability and chaos in every sector and then put a toll booth in front of every single valuable public good or service so that those in power can enrich themselves. Two wings of the same bird when we are talking about the fight against empire, because both of these parties, and I hope this heavy rain is not making it making my voice too quiet. Are you guys able to hear me okay? Not too much background noise?
You're doing fine.
We have got a good old-fashioned tropical deluge happening here in Santa Barbara, and it's overdue. These two parties share an absolute and complete total commitment to the war machine. Just to quickly get into pieces of that. $1 trillion a year, more than 50% of our congressional budget goes directly into the war machine, goes directly into the military industrial complex, properly speaking. And when you add the auxiliary institutions, border security, TSA, and these other associated costs of empire, that number goes to about $1.3 trillion, and that becomes about 2/3 of our total congressional budget. We spend between 50 and 65% of everything that they take from us in taxes, blowing people up in their sleep in other countries and making essentially 5 corporations insanely wealthy, because out of all of that quote unquote defense spending, which is just warmonger spending, about 50% of it goes to just 5 corporations: Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, and the 5th is slipping my mind. Someone can web search it. I won't say Google it. Google gets no shine when I'm speaking. Web search it and find out which of is the 5th company. So all of that is just to say that whether it is Team Blue or Team Red, they are funneling resources into this never-ending war machine, and we must organize to stop it. I mentioned before that I converted to Islam at age 15. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X cover to cover in one night. And when I got to the end of that book, I wanted what Malcolm had at the end of that book. Malcolm had what it looked for sure to me like complete liberation from all of the internal oppressors, the demons that he had been fighting throughout his life, and complete liberty from those external oppressors in the world. So I ran out to my school library and I got an English translation of the Quran, and I read that cover to cover the next night, and I had converted to Islam before the week was out. And in my academic work, I have studied those African Islamic anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist resistance movements, especially in West Africa, but also the way that they have taken place in other parts of the African diaspora. But Malcolm wasn't just the initiation into my own personal spiritual journey, and I'll come back to that in brief fashion a little bit later, but he was also my induction into the Black radical tradition. And the Black radical tradition embodied in Malcolm. We'll just go straight to Malcolm for one of the quotes. Malcolm said, "We are not outnumbered, we are out-organized." Malcolm also said, "Never let your enemy tell you how many of you there are." Part of what holds back the capacity for successful anti-imperialist political organizing in the United States is that we have actually internalized the categories of our colonizer, and we do not believe that this struggle can be successful. Many of us think that we have to play ball and play nice with Team Blue especially in order to affect this kind of change. But hopefully this massive genocide in Gaza over the past 15 months will have demonstrated to us that there is no successful anti-imperialist work with a party that would conduct a genocide in plain sight and then expect you to go running back to the polls to vote for them. And when I gave these talks in the Muslim community during the campaign, I made it clear, and I'll get to this in a moment, with, kind of how the Muslim community stepping up and voting for the Green Party in this electoral cycle presents an unprecedented opportunity for anti-imperialist organizing. I'll get to that in a moment. But when I spoke to those communities, I said, listen, we have traditions of disciplined fundraising, and we've built big, beautiful mosques all around this country. And they kill us with impunity and expect us to vote for them. Can we invest in developing political power? And we as a community, as an anti-imperialist community, not just the Muslim community now, but as an anti-imperialist community, need to get invested in developing political power. This cannot just be about movement work. It is not that any political party is bigger than the movement. No political party is bigger than the movement. But as Kwame Ture, who was a student of Malcolm, put it, he said, people usually mobilize around issues, but revolutionaries organize against systems. And what political party organizing does is it allows you to channel energy from mobilization around issues into organizing against systems. That's why it has to be political party work. Political party work is not the full compass and scope of the resistance that we must marshal, but it is absolutely crucial and fundamental. And one of the things that we actually have to do is to convince a lot of the young radicals, many of whom are anarchists and many of whom are completely disaffected with electoral politics at any level, that organizing for electoral purposes has a function. I'm thoroughly convinced of this because Huey P. Newton wouldn't have run for office twice if it didn't, right? Aaron Dixon, Seattle captain of the Black Panther Party, would not have ran for office as a Green in 2006 if political party organizing was not part of a revolutionary agenda. And I intend to make sure that a revolutionary agenda is represented in our political activities going forward. It hasn't come up yet in this gathering, but I have already I've already announced my intentions. Actually, it was mentioned. We are officially registered with the state of California. Our campaign is registered. We will officially launch the campaign just as soon as the last bureaucratic checks are cleared for opening the campaign bank account. That will happen either on Monday or Tuesday. And one of the things that I'm going to ask everyone in this room at the end of this gathering is to, if the message and the call that I'm delivering in this brief gathering resonates, then please aid in this affair, because we are going to need to make as much electoral impact. And California sets a precedent for the nation. If the United States of America was 50 independent nations, California would be the 5th largest economy in the world. Whatever happens in the state of California is going to have a dramatic effect on national outcomes. And one of the principal reasons why I chose to run for governor in this 2026 cycle was precisely so that we would not be appearing to have a fallow period in between presidential elections. This needs to be a period for aggressive organizing activity, infrastructure building, and fundraising. That brings me to the 5 things that I told to the Green Party National Committee, that I've told to a number of internal committees inside the Green Party. And I'll share those with you now just as a way, because I know many of y'all are Greens and many of y'all are not Greens. But after putting the Democrats and Republicans on blast, and especially the Democrats for their massive electoral failure in this past cycle, it would be intellectually dishonest not to also carry out a thoroughgoing assessment of where we as Greens fell short and have room for growth. You can't be holding other folks accountable and then not hold yourself accountable. So the first thing that I said is that inside the Green Party, we have a lack of vertical integration that makes it difficult for the party to have maximum impact. What I encountered inside the campaign was very little connection between the national presidential campaign, the Green Party National, various state parties, and local chapters. This is what those capitalist types call vertical integration. There was little communication or correspondence between those levels, and it made it difficult for us to move. One of the places where, for example, PSL, it has the Party for Socialism and Liberation has organizational structures that are things that we can learn from, is that they are much more disciplined in that kind of vertical integration. And that's something that we as Greens should be paying attention to as we think through, models of making sure that people are getting the support on the ground that they need, and that the visibility that we were able to obtain as a kind of national political campaign, even though there was obviously a media effort to try to make us disappear, we nonetheless were able to have a certain amount of media impact. There were no organic mechanisms really for allowing that visibility to trickle down to chapter levels. And all of our local Green Party organizations, all of our chapters, all of our state organizations need additional support. That's something that the Green Party has to hold itself accountable for, and it's something that I'm trying to help bring to the party. The second thing that was on that list was culture. And with this, I'm just going to be blunt about this. This is not just a Green Party problem, but it is a problem inside the Green Party. I'm just going to say this. With all due respect to everyone gathered in the room, white leftists have been content being on the playing field, but have not been playing to win. This has to be a fight for our very survival. This cannot be about getting ballot access. It can't be about just winning issues. This has to be about winning power. Because without that political power, they will continue to steamroll us, whether in blue form or in red form, with repression, political repression. We saw more pigs on college campuses beating up kids just for saying free Palestine when we had Team Blue in office than we ever had under Team Red. And it is only going to escalate because we have taught them that they can do this to us in public and we will not resist substantively. So we need to have a culture that is about defeating these people. And that means that that goes into the third point. We need to be much more serious about fundraising. And I know that I'm talking to a group of Marxists here, but people need to understand this. We were out fundraised by the Democrats 1,500 to 1 before I joined the campaign in August of 2024. The Democrats raised $1.5 billion for their campaign. The Republicans raised $1 billion. In the 10 months of the Jill Stein campaign before I joined, the campaign raised $1.1 million. In the 2 months that I was on the campaign raised $1.1 million. And that is because I absolutely insisted on developing productive fundraising relationships inside the Muslim community. And to go back to the electoral outcomes, this will come up when we get to demographic change in a moment. 53% of the American Muslim community voted with the Green Party in this last electoral cycle. That is a demographic shift in a major ethnic or religious community that we have not seen the like of in a couple of generations. Not since Black folks abandoned the party of Lincoln for the party of FDR in the 30s did you see such a mass migration in one single electoral cycle. And this presents a tremendous opportunity for leftist organizing, because now we have the substantial demographic, but also fundraising and organizing weight of the Muslim community. And we absolutely have to benefit from that. We have to build a new kind of coalition. Traditional leftist politics are a jumping off point, but they are not going to be sufficient for the scale of organizing that we're going to need next. And it's going to take fundraising. And I know leftists get weird when we start talking about money, but there is no amount of candidate quality. There is no amount of effective messaging. There is no amount of grassroots organizing that will allow you to win when you are being outspent 1,500 to 1 or 1,000 to 1. You may be able to compete if you are being outspent 20 to 1 or 50 to 1, maybe even 100, but you are not going to win when you are being outspent 1,500 to 1. And that means that we have to take very seriously the mandate to fundraise, because building chapters, building grassroots organization, getting the incentive structure of human behavior is such that you cannot expect to do this all with volunteer work. If we could have done it with those kind of structures, we would have been done it, and we haven't. And so we need to actually compete aggressively in the fundraising circle in order to be able to build the institutional infrastructures that will be needed to actually win elections. The good news is that you only need to do it once. If you can actually get campaign finance reform into the public discussion, this is an 80-20 issue for the American people. Most Americans, irrespective of party, do not want elections to go to the highest bidder. But neither of these two parties has any kind of incentive in having that conversation in public. We need to show up as enough of an electoral threat to raise this as a central issue in national electoral politics, and then watch the outcomes that come behind it. Because the reality is, and I guess it's been a lot of doom and gloom so far, but let's talk about some of the opportunities in this moment. 70% of American independents have said in recent polling that teams blue and red are so bad at their job that we need a successful third party just in order to challenge them. 53% of Democrats say the same, 48% of Republicans. In another poll, it's just globally, not separated by independents, Democrats, or Republicans, but it's 63% of the American electorate says that the Dems and Republicans are so incompetent that we need a successful third party to serve as a counterweight. If we are able to build an anti-imperialist coalition, making a very simple argument, and let's just get to the bottom of that argument. All of the social services that Americans know that they have been deprived of, healthcare, affordable housing, right? Public transportation, basic infrastructure, all of these things are things that we can afford if we stop spending 65% of our budget on mass murder. It is a very simple argument to make. We can deliver on meeting the needs of the average working American if we stop reaching into your pocket for your tax dollars, taking the money out and handing it to Raytheon and Lockheed Martin after laundering it through foreign genocides. This is an argument that has purchase with the American people, especially with young people, if we can pierce that media bubble of invincibility that surround Team Blue and Team Red. And this goes to another messaging question about how to build a successful anti-imperialist political party. And I know I'm going to make the Marxists mad when I say this, but I don't think that it has to be done with messaging that says that we are running from the left of the Democrats. I don't. That has partially to do with the fact that my training in anti-capitalist organizing comes from a time before Marx. The people that I write about and study in West Africa were organizing anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist resistance before Karl Marx was a glint in his daddy's eye, like we used to say back home. I'm talking about anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist resistance in West Africa in the 1650s, 1700s that was explicitly anti-imperialist, explicitly anti-capitalist, and was not framed in a left to right spectrum. And I tend to think of things as much as possible in indigenous categories that are not drawn from European history. That is part of my Afrocentric resistance that I learned from Malcolm. And I think that there was an argument to be made that the issues that we as anti-imperialists, that we as socialists, that we as Marxists are actually interested in delivering to the American people are things that are popular, that we are actually between liberal extremists on one hand and conservative extremists on the other. But the thing that socialists are actually trying to deliver to the American people are 70-30, 80-20 issues for the American people. They are right down the middle with respect to the American populace. And after being divided into camps of culture war for the past 30 years between right and left, some other kind of messaging needs to obtain. Back to Malcolm on this particular point. Malcolm famously said, the white liberal is like a fox. It bares its teeth and you think that it's smiling at you, but you are on the menu. The white conservative is a wolf. It bares its teeth and into a vicious snarl, and the Negro knows where he stands. The reality is that now the entirety of the American voting populace is stuck between these two predators, is stuck between foxes on one hand and wolves on the other. These are political parties that are driven by liberals and conservatives whose aim is to extract as much as possible, not just in terms of our resources, but also in terms of our rights. To leave us broken, to leave us powerless. And so obeying the logic of the culture war and the liberals versus conservatives, for me, is a lost cause. I think that we need to speak a populist political language that makes it clear that the basic bread and butter interests of working class Americans, and my father was a locksmith with a 6th grade education. I need a political party that speaks to him. And as I said to the Green Party, the Northern California Greens, when we were together, Laura and I were together not too long ago, we have policies, socialist policies that are the best policies for workers, but we're not a workers' party. Our demography, the demographics of our party is not worker driven. We have I would not have joined the presidential ticket if it wasn't for the fact that there is the Green Party has been running on reparations for the descendants of enslaved Africans in the Americas since 2012. We have the most thoroughgoing Black liberation agenda, but demographically, we're not a Black party. We have the best immigration policies, and we're weak in the Latin community. And this is precisely because we have not done the work for those next two things that are on that list of 5. I mentioned fundraising. The last 2 are team building and demographic change. With respect to team building, we need to be fundraising at scale in order to be able to run robust rosters of candidates and coalition candidates. We need Peace and Freedom. We need Green Party. We need PSL. We need independence. We need to be building strength outside of the duopoly, and we need to be sitting and breaking bread with one another. I do not know if the Green Party will be that successful anti-imperialist political party. I intend to make it my business that we are, but I don't know outcomes. But what I do know, they usually say the proof is in the pudding, but the actual English expression is the proof of the pudding is in the eating, is that if we go about building this and give people something that is nourishing, then we are going to draw people in. If PSL is able to outcompete us in developing these constituencies, if other parties are able to outcompete us, then, and we need to build coalitions, then we build coalitions. The aim is victory. The aim is liberation. And I made a post when I was drawn into the campaign, and people were saying, well, can't you guys work with Claudia and Karina? What about Dr. West and Melina? And there was a lot of leftist angst in that moment. And I said, listen, people have given their lives to the buildings of these political parties. You do not simply ask them to drop what they've been doing and team up with you just because you think that you have an electoral advantage. You are going to have to build something that shows people that they need to either get down or lay down because it's going down. You need to show them that you are building something that works and that can win. And when that happens, reorientations will take place. And that brings me to the demographic change piece. I already pointed to the fact that there is a sea change that has gone under the radar. People do not understand how significant it is that 53% of Muslim Americans voted for the Green Party in this last electoral cycle, and only 20% for Trump, 20% for Kamala. That is after 60 years of Muslim Americans voting Democrat at about a 65% clip in one electoral cycle. And I'm just going to be blunt about this. I said this at a campaign event in New Jersey. I asked a crowd, probably about 80-20 Muslim, non-Muslim. I said, do Jews vote for Nazis? And they said no. And I said, well, then do you think Muslims are ever going to vote for Democrats again? And they said no. You have to understand that the Muslim vote is never going back to the Democratic Party. That the wholesale slaughter of 200,000 plus Muslims in the third holiest place on the planet for Muslims is a catastrophe from which the Democratic Party will never recover in the Muslim community. And I said a week after I joined the campaign, I think it was August 23rd when I first said this in public, I said the Democrats have no path to victory in the November election. And people looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, you don't understand. The internal polling shows that in the swing states just of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, Joe Biden got 65% of the Muslim vote in 2020, and he was polling at 12% in January of 2024. Dead man walking. There's no way that that party is ever going to recover from what it did to itself in the Muslim community, which means that there is now an opportunity to take that political bloc and join it to this anti-imperialist struggle in an organic, substantive way that leads to new kinds of capacity for organization, leads to new kind of capacity for growth, that leads to new solidarities. And those are the new solidarities that have been building in the Free Palestine movement over the last 15 and 16 months, and upon which we must grow. But it is going to take the leadership. And, again, I'm not a politician, I'm an organizer and a teacher, so I usually just call things the way that I see them. The aging white leftists need to take an each one teach one attitude and start making more room for the diverse crowds of people that were swelling those movement spaces and have been swelling those movement spaces over the last year and a half. These are Muslim and Muslim adjacent. These are Black, Brown, Indigenous, and Latin folks. These are young folks. And we need to be providing openings for leadership in all of the infrastructure of these political communities for that generation. This is an opportunity that I think people might be underestimating the opportunity that we have in front of us. The Republicans, so that was one prediction. The one prediction I made on the campaign, I only made two. The first was that the Democrats had no way of winning the election. The second prediction that I made is that the Democratic Party is going the way of the Whigs. That they will never win another presidential election after what they've done to themselves in this genocide and the way that they have completed the full corporate sell-off of the Democratic Party. The Republicans, before the Civil War, were getting about 2% of the vote in national elections, and they emerged as a dominant political party after the collapse of the Whigs because they took a stand on abolition. Those of us that are part of this anti-imperialist movement, if we take a stand, if we dig our heels into the ground, if we organize, if we fundraise, if we create capacity, we are absolutely poised to make the Democratic Party a thing of the past and essentially irrelevant. They have already doomed themselves. They are never going to get up from what they have done to themselves. When I said it on the campaign, I said the future of American politics is a traffic light decision. Red means stop, green means go. There is just no realistic opportunity for the Democrats to try to assume once again that they are going to be able to take over a position of fictive leadership for working class communities or for underrepresented minorities. So that means that we need to organize aggressively, and we need to organize at scale. And I'll just say this, is that a number of our most important donors in the Muslim community as the campaign was coming to an end were people who are wealthy donors and completely committed to this anti-imperialist vision, not just because of their Muslim faith or the political sensibilities associated with it. But I had one of our key donors, I said, listen, I said, doesn't the way that I talk about revolution, scare you capitalist types? And one of them said to me, he said, no. He said, people always underestimate, ruling classes always underestimate how close the people are to revolution when wealth inequalities reach the kinds of extremes that they are at now. You that are speaking about ending this kind of inequality and imperialism sound crazy to certain segments of the population, but it is the only sane talk in moments like this. We have seen a massive wealth transfer from the poorest Americans to the wealthiest billionaires in the last 4 years, and that process is accelerating. We have surpassed the kind of wealth inequalities that obtained in the Haitian Revolution or the French Revolution or the Senegambian Revolution, which you guys haven't heard of, but which is the subject of my first book that led to the first successful anti-slavery movements in West Africa. We have reached a tipping point. And the last thing that I'll say about that political party organizing is that political party organizing has played a crucial role in all successful modern revolutions, all of them. We are not going to upend this system without this kind of disciplined building of infrastructure, without running candidates, without building ground games, without building field organizations, without building regional teams. And I very much look forward, to doing one of these in person so that we can break bread in Oakland sooner than later, because that's also going to be necessary. It's going to be necessary for all of us who are drawn to stand for our fellow humans against this empire, who see the moral obligation of standing against this fundamental evil in our time. It's absolutely crucial for us to sit together, break bread with one another, hear one another's stories, learn from one another's experiences, because this is going to have to be a movement of love above all. Revolutionaries are motivated by love. We cannot watch as human beings are abused and tortured and exploited and manipulated because we love humanity too much, because it means too much to us. So I look forward to breaking bread with all of you and building, and especially to learning, from you in this conversation and all future conversations. I realize I've gone a little bit long on my time, so I'll pull things back there.
Sharon, you're muted.
Sharon, you are muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I was thanking Butch, and I wanted to call on Laura before we open for a Q&A and general discussion. Laura, please go ahead.
Okay, well, there's not much that I want to add at this moment, and there may be during the questions and answers and comment, there may be some more things that I would like to say, other than the fact that California is extremely important. And I know a number of people that are listening, that are participating in this are not from California, but it's to have Butch Ware be running for governor of California is something that I'm finding really exciting personally. And the opportunities that we have to pull together now, we being everyone who is actually in that 70-30% of wanting healthcare, education, homes, income, that the opportunities we have to pull together and to recognize how much power we have and to go forward with that. And so that's all I'll say at this time. I'm looking forward to the Q&A and comments. And thank you, Butch Ware, for being here.
It's an honor, Laura, and an honor to follow in your footsteps and running for governor of California. And I'm going to tell you this right now. We're going to give them hell this time around. Watch.
Well, thank you both.